Please take your seats quickly, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Tennis Weekly with Joel, Kim and Chris. On today's Billie Jean King Cup Special, sponsored by DownloadTennis.com.
France sizzle to secure finals spot.
Kim quizzes Garcia on career renaissance.
And we sit down with Barnett and Nicholls for an exclusive.
Kim, Chris, today is the 15th of April and we are here to catch up on day 2 from the Billie Jean King Cup Finals qualifier. Great Britain versus France. And yeah, I mean, that was a bit of a mouthful, but listeners, we are back, second day running. And again, we are not at Virtual Tennis Weekly headquarters. We are in our nice apartment in Coventry. And actually, for the first time, we can actually understand why it is called Cathedral View.
I do have to issue a little bit of an apology because I can see it from where I'm sitting. I can see 2 spires. They're definitely not anywhere near us. I would not say that we are cathedral adjacent. We are canal adjacent. So if I were to market our flat, I would say it's a riverside penthouse.
If I'd have known you'd be so fussy about the distance from the cathedral spires, I would have suggested you booked it yourself, Chris. But no, we have 2 views. We have a canal view, we have a cathedral view. I've just had to close the curtain because the sun was in my eyes. So it's a stunning afternoon in Coventry. We've had some stunning tennis at the arena as well.
I'm almost sad it is stunning outside because it does mean that we are recording slightly earlier than yesterday because unfortunately the tie did finish sadly prematurely for most British fans.
It did. So we were always going to be up against, a tough ask today, having gone down 2-0 from Friday's action. And it was actually Garcia against Dart as the first match of the day. So it was all on Harriet Dart to keep Britain's hopes alive in the tie. We mistakenly assumed it might have been the doubles first. And maybe...
I don't feel like we were alone, though.
No, I think because that's what they do at Davis Cup. I think, we thought it was going to be the same sort of format. So apologies, listeners, for any mistakes there. But, I mean, begs the question, should they have made the doubles the third tie? Would that have been better for Britain?
Well, I think it'd be better for the tennis generally. I think people like to see a bit of a mix. There's a reason why if the final rubbers are dead that you play the doubles, because that is a different sort of thing for people to see and a different spectacle. At the Davis Cup, when we went to that earlier in the year, the doubles is the first thing that gets played on the Saturday. And I think that really does kind of, if you have great singles players, you might not have great doubles players. It's a bit of a leveler. It's very exciting. The format is obviously a deciding point. And I feel like it's something that you don't want it to be an afterthought, because I think that doubles is something that is growing in profile. And it is something where you might get to see some of the best singles players play, because I'd have loved to see Garcia on a doubles court.
Yeah, it would have been great. You would have probably expected, to see Garcia and Mladenovic, but I've got to echo the same points. I don't really understand why the doubles wasn't the live rubber. I think it would have made a more compelling spectacle. And personally, I think if you think about the competition, I don't want to feel like this competition is just based on singles players and singles results alone. I think it's got to show the most of the best of a team, and therefore it can't just necessarily focus on one aspect of tennis. It's going to focus on multiple aspects. So that's why for me I was a little bit disappointed we didn't get the doubles as that third rubber. Yeah,
same. I think it would have been a really lively encounter, and which we got in the doubles match regardless, even though it was a dead rubber. But let's look at what we did have as the first match of the day instead, which did get dramatic at times. Went to 3 sets. Caroline Garcia against Harriet Dart. The second set going to a tie-break. Dart clinching it, saving match points to do so, to take the match into a third.
I was surprised, I'm not going to lie, that went to a third, particularly after that first set where I was like, this could be over very, very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, Chris, tell us what happened in that first set. It was very quick, wasn't it, for Garcia racing through that one. Did you feel optimistic about Dart's chances after that first set?
Well, I had been checking the flight times for Garcia to get to Stuttgart, and by looking at it, I think she was in a rush because she started very aggressively. And in order to make that flight, I think she was hoping to get this done in 2. And then...
Did we decide on whether we think she was going to go from London or from the Midlands?
She's absolutely going from Heathrow. I've checked it out. It's very expensive if you have a connecting flight to Birmingham. So I'm sure that she can probably cover the cost of that. And maybe she isn't comparing on Skyscanner. But Heathrow is where she's be flying from. And she actually probably had to delay her flight because once again we had another epic long set, another tie break. So she played 4 tie breaks in her 2 singles matches, which was a bit mad. But I did not think that we would get that tie break, as you said, after that first set, because it was one-way traffic, and it felt like Garcia had fully understood what she needed to do to get past Dart in terms of attack the second serve, and she was serving well herself, be proactive, and it looked like it was kind of a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, to me, watching that first set, it sort of told me, I think, what my deepest fears was that, Katie Bolter, for example, her ball striking is fantastic, and the power and the aggression that she can bring to the court really did match Caroline Garcia for long periods on day one. And in that first set, to me, Harriet Dart just was not able, I feel, to bring that ball striking quality that was going to make Caroline Garcia feel really uncomfortable. Myself and Chris, we saw Dart against Rybakina. And for me, what was kind of a similar sort of matchup in Glasgow at the end of last year, where, again, you just felt that Rybakina would have just kind of dealt with, the ability that kind of Dart possesses on the court. But I was impressed how much she bounced back in that second set.
Yeah, and I think it was one which a bit different from the Garcia that we saw the previous day, because it did feel like her level did drop in that second set as well. Yeah. And I think that Dart did definitely start to serve better. I think she did take something off her first serve, so she made a few more of them.
I think she needed to, right?
She needed to. A little bit less pressure on the second serve, because they were kind of averaging around 60 miles an hour, which against Garcia, who's standing...
She was just dropping them in.
Oh, she was standing so far up the box as well and moving forward. So I think it is a bad matchup. You can serve Dart off the court, that's definitely true. And although she got that great win against Badosa, I think it is a different level of firepower that we're dealing with those 2 players.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one, because I think, the Dart second serve definitely did come under the microscope. But it was quite interesting because Caroline Garcia's court position, she was so far in the baseline, there was nowhere she could only go. She had to go to the net. She wasn't exactly going to retreat back to the baseline, and it really kind of it did work for her at moments, but also there were quite a few fantastic passing shots from Harriet Dart, because she just knew what was coming from the Garcia end.
Yeah, I remember seeing one point, I think it was in the tiebreak, and Garcia was practically at the service line to receive, which just it was very entertaining. But that tiebreak, very dramatic. It kept going on and on. I actually missed the end of the tiebreak because I had to dash out to find somewhere quiet because I had a little guest appearance on BBC Radio London. But the live score app had died. I was no longer being able to watch the tiebreak, so I sort of went live on the radio and I didn't know what had happened in the tiebreak, which is slightly interesting. But yeah, we'll be putting a link on socials if anyone wants to catch a bit of that as well from the women's sports show on Radio London.
I'll definitely be listening. I think it's something where you're talking about more than just the action from the tennis. And I think you're also talking about the decision from the WTA to resume activity in China. So that's a very...
Tennis Weekly making
a very
waves.
hot topic.
And we'll be covering that properly on Monday's standard catch-up show, won't we? Because there's a lot to unpack from that announcement. But yeah, so it all got very busy all of a sudden with the tiebreak, the radio. Then the match kind of finished fairly quickly after that. The third set going one way after the tiebreak.
It did feel like that second set tiebreak was almost like Harriet Dart's last stand, and I'm really impressed with how she fought and was able to take it to a third. But I mean, it feels frustrating. I know we're talking about her second serve particularly, but also it's so frustrating to see, I feel like, Harriet Dart from the baseline. I think she's got a fantastic double-handed backhand. You know, the number of winners she was hitting, particularly down the line, it's a fantastic weapon of hers. But it feels completely night and day between her double-handed backhand and her forehand.
I think when you have a game like darts, the difficulty is that you have to be playing right at the top of your level, and you have to be very mentally switched into going for it, because quite often she can be a little bit passive in some of those moments, and she has
particularly
to force
against Cornet.
Yeah,
completely different matchup.
It is a very different matchup. She was not going for the shots in the same way, and I think with the match today, her forehand had a bit more on it at times. I think she obviously was out hit in the first and the third sets, but it is a very difficult mental decision to make, whether you go for that second serve, whether you go for that forehand you don't necessarily feel comfortable with. And I think that's probably where some of the matches she loses on tour happens, because she really needed to mix up that second serve and put more on it, because so many of those points were a foregone conclusion. She knew it. You watched her play. She knew what was going to come, but she wasn't able to kind of release the arm. She had a few practice shots to see if she could release it, but she got a bit tight in those moments on that second serve, because the pressure that was mounting on her was, it was very high.
And it just felt like it was just giving confidence to Garcia. I think, we were watching it and you were saying to me, it was like, got to do more with the first serve here, because yes, Garcia's winning the point, but also, she's just growing and growing more in the match and getting back into it after that second set blip.
Yeah, and it felt like even if that second set had gone kind of a different way, whatever the case had been, it would have ended up. Obviously, it was 3 sets. It would have ended up with the Garcia win, because the tactic was there, and she wasn't going to change that away. I think she did get a bit tight in the tiebreak, and this is something I was going to actually ask you about, in terms of she played 4 tiebreaks in 2 matches, and she won 2 of them, which for someone who serves as well as she does, and as well as she served during the sets, it felt like that first serve was sort of missing today in the tiebreak, and I think it was more present yesterday. So I was quite surprised that Dart would take a tiebreak against her. Yeah,
it did certainly at times, I feel, go walkabout the Garcia first serve, because it's such a great weapon for her. I feel like at times during this tie, when we've seen her on the singles court, the crowd's been really into it. They're really getting back into it. They're sensing some opportunity. But Garcia, she's got that first serve, and she just literally can just slam the door shut with an ace, and the point's gone, and we have to move on to the next one.
Well, we did ask her yesterday about whether it was sweeter to get the victory after a very tight 3-set win, and she said she much preferred to get a 6-3, 6-3. And maybe that is why, because maybe
she had
the
flight to catch. She wants the flight.
She has
got
a
the early flight to catch.
Exactly. Maybe she's already checked in, but I think it was, maybe she doesn't like those close matches, and maybe she does get a little bit tight, and that's why we've seen that in the past when her ranking dropped. Maybe in those moments the pressure does pile on, and that's what she's become much better at dealing with in the Renaissance, which brings me on to the fact that straight after your interview, Kim, you had another mad dash to press, where you got to ask Caroline about the Renaissance and got her first-hand response to that. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on what she said.
Congratulations on the win and for sealing it for France. I actually just wanted to ask how you're feeling going into the clay court season now, because we're almost a year on from Roland Garros doubles again, and you're kind of a renaissance in your career. So how are you feeling after the Billie Jean Cup qualifier and going into the clay?
Right now, if you ask me, I feel exhausted, and I don't really see how the transition is going to happen, but it is what it is, and you know the part of the deal when you come and play for the Billie Jean Cup, and it's hard courts, and you have to play on clay, so it's obviously hard, but the goal this weekend was to get the win and to qualify, so I'm super proud of the team and everyone. And of course I'm really excited about the clay court season. It's some great tournaments, some big ones, and always great atmosphere, and leading to Roland Garros, our French slams. It's very special for me and for all the French players. Last year winning the doubles there meant a lot, on court and off court, I think, and obviously I'm super excited to go back and play in front of the French crowd.
Yes, I was able to mention the Renaissance to her, which I was most pleased about. And obviously she's looking forward to the clay season, bringing back great memories from that win at Roland Garros last year, which really did, start, I think,
kick-started it, didn't it?
Her climb back up to the higher echelons of the ranking. So, it was fantastic that we were able to ask her that. I think she's tired from her exploits here, but looking forward to getting out to Stuttgart for the clay. And I'm sure she'll be making her way to the airport sometime soon, as you mentioned, Chris.
Wouldn't it be funny if Garcia Raducanu first round. I don't know if there are buys for Garcia in the main draw, but that would be, I mean, given the context of the tie and what we've been speaking about, it would just be absolute. It would certainly raise an eyebrow, wouldn't it, if when the draw gets announced tomorrow.
Who would you be rooting for in that, for the story?
That's a big one.
If Garcia gets it, it might say that maybe Emma should have been here.
It's a tricky one. I'd love to know what Anki Offenfong thinks about that.
I was just about to say that. Yeah, what would Anki Offenfong think? But yeah, France are well and truly through to the Billie Jean King Cup finals in November. And Britain will have to make their way through a playoff, I guess, in November. They'll be up against someone from the World Group 1. But let's take a very quick break now. We'll be back in the second half to talk about the last rubber that was played, the doubles, and our very exciting interview with the doubles pair, Alicia, Barnett and Olivia Nicholls. So do not go anywhere. Welcome back to the Tennis Weekly podcast, sponsored by downloadtennis.com. And now we're going to move on to look at the last rubber that was played today, the doubles against France. We had obviously Kristina Mladenovic, top-notch doubles player, playing with Clara Burel for France, and they were up against the British doubles pairing of Olivia Nicholls and Alicia Barnett. It was quite close in the first set. I think the French serve for that set weren't able to get across the line. The British girls were able to clinch it. But then the French were quite dominant in the second set, weren't they? Went to a champions tiebreak. Chris, talk us through the match, but especially that champions tiebreak, because the British girls did fantastically well to come back from quite a deficit in that, didn't they?
They really did. And I think that's something that the first set showed as well, that they never give up and they really do just want to do the best job for each other, because they play week in, week out. They are best friends. When we spoke to them, they're inseparable. And so I think for them, it's like no ball is a lost cause. And I felt like that really got them through that first set. And when it came to that champions tiebreak to finish, they went 8-2 down and it looked like all hope was lost. But you saw Alicia at the back of the court. She was geeing up the crowd. She was saying, come on. Even though she did a double fault to go 8-2 down, she was not giving up, and she was going to do the best job she could for her country and also for her team. And it was truly inspiring, because the way that they came back was something that no one would really have thought. 8-2 is not a deficit I've seen level out at 9-all before. That was saving match points in that as well to get there. And I think it was something that they said afterwards that they really did deserve that as a team, because having had so many tie breaks, so many really close matches, and players who've been playing much better than their ranking would suggest they could play, finally they did get a win, and I think it was really important for the team and morale.
Yeah, I agree. I think, in relation to that tie, I think on the outside, yeah, you could look at it like it's a dead rubber, it doesn't mean anything, but if you're in that arena, feeling the atmosphere, and seeing the approach that Barnett and Nicholls took to the match, the fact that they were down so far in that championship tiebreak at the end and were like not giving up. I think it was just fantastic to see that, that approach, and how they were just kind of like, yeah, we're going to fight for this rubber. Yes, it might not mean anything, but we need to, we want to kind of inspire the crowd. And I can't think of anything better than to see them just come roaring back against, Kristina Mladenovic. She's a fantastic doubles player. And, that's a really good scalp, I feel, to win. Yes, Mladenovic, we would probably have expected her to play with Caroline Garcia, but still, having Burel on her side as well, it was still a fantastic win for them.
It was a fantastic win, and I think there are moments in that match where we just thought Mladenovic is a class above, and she's always been a player. Obviously, her ranking's been as high as top 10. She's made quarterfinals at slams before. She's won, I think, 9 doubles Grand Slam titles. But
some of her pickups were
incredible. It's her shot making and her hand skills are incredible. But I guess that's the same thing we talked about, where she's now down in a similar sort of ranking position to sort of the Katie Boulters in that sort of space. And we talked about some of the frustrations that must be there. And I would kind of beg to ask the same question, Joel, in terms of what do we think it is that kind of has led her to be in this sort of situation where she should be winning that doubles tie. She should be winning so many matches, and she isn't.
Because she's in that sort of weird place now where, when it comes to her doubles partners at tournaments, her doubles ranking is really high and it gets her into like those premier events. but she can't necessarily do it on the singles. And if she does want to focus on singles, it's almost like, sorry, I can't play those top tier events. I'm gonna have to go elsewhere because of my ranking. And it's that imbalance is so massive. It's very surprising given the level we've seen from Mladenovic and the kind of results and performances we've seen from her in the past. I mean, we were talking, I always remember her performance against Australia away in the Billie Jean King Cup at the finals before this kind of new format, a few years ago. She is an unbelievable competitor on her day.
I mean, it may have been different if she'd been playing with Garcia today, if it had been a live rubber. I'm sure, I have a feeling the two of them would have got the job done. I
would have loved to have seen that. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah,
I would have loved to have seen that more, I think, as the live third rubber versus Dart Garcia in the singles. There are times, I think, when you watch Garcia and Mladenovic, you think, I've just got to appreciate that these are just two women who are on top of their game at the moment. And there were times, during the last couple of days when I was just like, that is really good. And as much as I'm a GB fan, I really, really appreciate what you've just done there.
Well, I think the crowd did as well. Although obviously most of the crowd were cheering for Team GB, I think they appreciated just being able to see the likes of Garcia, top 5 player, just seeing her come to Coventry and do her thing as well. So it was, we had a great crowd, great atmosphere all weekend. And, Barnett and Nicholls did fantastically well to win that, and they said afterwards they very much did it for the team because everyone put their heart and soul into the weekend and came so close, so it was nice for them to do it for the team. But Chris, you actually spoke to them ahead of the tie, didn't you? You had a quick chat with them sort of on Thursday, I think it was. So let's have a listen to what Olivia and Alicia had to say.
We have a few questions about kind of life on tour. We have a question that relates to kind of a bit about what's the perfect ingredients for a doubles combination, and then we wanted to put you guys to the test on your knowledge of each other. So that's a bit different.
It's fun.
And then we can always give you a very favourable edit if you don't know each other at all, if it turns out.
Yeah, absolute strangers.
Yeah,
Spend
exactly.
24/7 with each other.
Yeah, okay, great. So, no pressure. So first of all, we were watching you in Glasgow last year, which was obviously an incredible result for you guys. Just a quick question on kind of how that success has kind of propelled you on since then, and how that's kind of changed your life on tour, and how that's kind of changed your expectations as to where you might be looking to try and set your goals for the year.
I think last year was just an absolute dream. It was a lot of firsts. We played first main draw Wimbledon, US Open, and then Billie Jean King Cup finals in Glasgow on home soil was just the cherry on top. So it was just a fairy tale year, really, and I think we got a taste of what it was like to play against the best in the world, and how that we can compete at that level and we can win at that level. So it was a big motivation for us, and we've worked really hard over Christmas, and unfortunately we've had a few little niggles here and there, but we're on the right path. We've got a great team around us, and we just really love being on tour, and we're going to new places still, and there's a lot of firsts still happening, hopefully French Open this year. So we've got a lot of goals and dreams that we want to achieve this year and following into the next year as well.
On the subject of kind of big wins, taking out Rebecca in the doubles last year is obviously something that's pretty epic. Seeing the way that she's serving this year, do you look back and think, we must have really been playing well to handle that one?
Yeah, I think at the time we weren't really thinking too much about who was at the other end or anything like that. We were just extremely happy to be part of the team and get that opportunity. But yeah, now you say that, and looking at the kind of starts of the year she's had and how she's been playing, I guess when you reflect, it shows what a really good win that was.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. And you were talking about kind of life on the tour, so you're kind of blending a bit of the WTA events with some ITF events, and there was some kind of recent comments from, I think it was Denis Shapovalov, who was talking about the fact that there is this sort of difference between how some of the ITF events run and how some of the Challenger Tour events run, from the men's to the women's side of things. Do you think that's something that you've noticed kind of now you're playing more around the world, or is that something that you wouldn't know that much in terms of the difference it would be?
I think for Liv and I, we, like I said, a lot of it is first experiences, so we're still learning everything and kind of settling. Like last week we were in Charleston and it was an incredible tournament, and you just felt like it was a different world. Almost like everyone was looking after you and so friendly, and then you come to certain like ITFs and it's you do everything for yourself, and it's figuring out how to get from the airport to the club, and it's all a little bit more of a grind. Like that's where we've come from, and we understand how like lucky we are, like where the hard work we've put in is finally paying off and you get looked after. But to be honest, like we try not to take anything for granted, and we just kind of show up to tournaments and you figure out it's all the same. Like figure out when you want to practice, where the practice courts are, where the changing room is, so in that sense it's all the same. So we try not to like take anything for granted, because we've obviously come from ITFs and all the way up to WTAs and Grand Slams, and there's definitely a notable difference between all of them.
How was it playing Charleston last week? Because that has a reputation as being one of the nicest tournaments to play, and players love it.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, it is probably the nicest tournament I have ever played, other than the Grand Slams. They put on an amazing players' party at the Riviera, which was right next to the Charleston Place Hotel, where all the players stayed. The city is a really nice place, and the tournament, you know, the provisions that they have for the players, the people, I literally couldn't fault it. I really, really enjoyed that week, and I hope that we can go.
We didn't
go
leave
next year.
It was so nice and sunny as well.
It's not quite as sunny in Coventry. No. I was going to ask you, so on the topic of kind of getting yourself to events and being kind of the grassroots side of things in that sense, you both paid for universities, but on the different sides of the pond, I believe. So in terms of that experience and kind of joining the tour a bit later, just a few words on kind of how you think that's helped you kind of burst off the tour and make such an impact in the way that you have.
Can you go first?
I think, so we both took different pathways. I kind of went with the British university route, and Lissy went with the American college route, and we've kind of ended up at the same place at the same time, which was really nice because we got to kind of start the journey out. I think I saw something on Instagram today that was 7 years ago that we played together for the British university team.
Wow.
And now we're here playing for the Great Britain team in the Billie Jean King Cup. So it was two different pathways, but both that stood us in good stead for the main tour. I felt like at my time at Loughborough University I improved a huge amount in that time. I had great facilities, great support staff, a really good coach in Tom Kiesel, who I still work with now, and that really helped me progress as a person and a player. And then by the time I graduated, I felt like I was more than ready to get started and give the main tour a go.
Yeah, the same for me. I mean, from a quite young age, I wanted to go to the States, and my dad and my mum really wanted that for me as well. They said tennis will be there afterwards, it's really important to get an education, and that was important for them and for me. So I was really lucky to get a place at Northwestern and play 4 years there. But for me, I think it was more about kind of gaining confidence. Like before I went to university, I was too nervous to ask other girls to warm up before a tournament, whereas you go to America across the pond and you're thrown in the deep end. I didn't know anyone, and so I had to be more confident, and then I got used to being more independent, and you just learn a lot more in life, and you have a lot more life experiences. So when I came out of university, I felt like I was ready to kind of take on the world in some sense. So it was just kind of like growing up. I needed to grow up, and I needed time on court. Like Liv and I, we didn't have maybe the academy structure as junior tennis, so we were playing on our local courts outside in the snow sometimes, I'm sure. So it was just a very different structure. So I think don't know.
It's a more rounded
we're
tennis
really
experience.
Lucky, and I wouldn't change anything. We've gone through a lot and had very different experiences, but we've lived a lot of life, and that's really
now 7 years
important.
later, here we are.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, fun little quiz. So, we'll give you a question each, but I'd love to hear both of your answers. So, you're answering for each other.
Okay.
So, it'd be, who is Alicia's favourite player to watch? You can't say yourself. Any.
I mean, it's a little bit controversial as she's on the opposing team here this week, but she's a big fan of Caroline Garcia, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, bang on.
Well, that's a correct answer. So then, on the other side of this, then let's ask Alicia. So, who would Olivia's dream doubles partner be? Who could be active or retired? If it's not yourself, obviously.
Yeah, obviously myself.
Yes.
I think Andy Murray probably. She loves him. I mean, he's an absolute legend.
We all do, right, this year.
I watched his match in Australia against Berrettini and then saw him next day in the gym, and I was like, sorry to fangirl you, but can you sign my ticket from the match last night? And he was like, yeah, of course I can.
That's epic. Yeah. I think every single player is just saying how much they're loving watching his matches.
He's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
He's so entertaining, and he's just like...
And he's got a metal hip.
Yeah.
It's wild. You can't wrap your head around it.
Yeah.
And then karaoke song. So what's Alicia's karaoke song?
Wow.
Was there too long a list?
There's too long a list.
So what won't she sing?
She hates me singing, but I love singing. One point, probably a 3-track playlist.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a set list.
I tend to overplay songs a lot, and she's like, "Oh, this one again."
Not
I actually can't.
matches.
I'm really sorry, off the top of my head, I can't think of what your karaoke song would be. I can't even think of what my own karaoke.
I think
song
mine
would
would probably be Angels.
I mean, it's a classic.
Yeah.
It's a classic.
Yeah.
And then final question would be: are you planning on playing mixed doubles at Wimbledon this year?
Oh, yeah,
Is that something you're thinking about?
We are
Sliding into any DMs or?
We would. I mean, obviously Wimbledon's amazing, so we want to be there as long as possible. But obviously, like,
You're asking Murray.
Yeah, you never know.
True.
Slide into his DMs, but we obviously have to focus on propelling our ranking, and we have goals for next year, like maybe even the Olympics. You never know. So we have to be really realistic of because there's tournaments on the second week. So if we want to play the mixed, and that's ideal, but we're going to have to see close to the time with where our rankings are at. And if we're being really boring, sorry.
No, all good. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time and good luck in the tie.
Thank you. Cheers.
I can totally relate to the fangirling going on for Andy Murray and getting a signed ticket. I'm not going to lie. Chris, you were a little surprised. I have got Andy Murray as my wallpaper. I'm a big Murray fan, as many of our listeners probably know. So, I really liked that sort of fan human insight that gave me that sort of realisation, or that sort of the appreciation that, yes, these are top performing pros in their profession, but at heart, they're also fans as well.
I think we are all Olivia on that this year. I think even the players are, as we talked about. But Joel, my only question about your phone background is that it's not a Wimbledon trophy he's holding up.
No, I know. It's specifically the US Open 2012, because it is the first Grand Slam he won. It is the Grand Slam I was there for in the crowd a few rows from the front against Novak Djokovic. So it's specifically that one. Yes, his hair looks a bit different, or decade plus on, but that's why I have that. And you told me, was it Daniela Hantuchova coasters? Is it?
I don't know what you're talking about, but I can confirm I do have
a set. The fangirling is real.
Yeah, I do have a set of 4 Daniela Hantuchova coasters. She's wearing an outfit from the Australian Open. It's not the year that she took out Serena, unfortunately. It is from a different year. I will just defend myself slightly and say they were a gift. But the fact that was a gift purchased for me
Kim,
also
how much
speaks
do you believe that they were a gift?
I think that's exactly the sort of thing you could maybe make up on like Etsy for someone who you know to be a massive fan of someone. And I think that's a great gift, given that she was obviously your hero when she was back playing. And I guess you're still a big fan. She's still punditing and, commentating and all that. But yeah, I wonder if our listeners have any stories of similar gifts they've received with tennis players' faces on. Yeah. I'd love to hear. I do have a Rafa Nadal coaster at home as well. I'm getting the coaster, Jack. The coaster vibe.
I've been left out.
It took a very long time for Kim to admit to having a Rafa coaster there. I was alone for a while, I felt.
But I feel like listeners would expect me to have a Rafa coaster, would they not? Anyway, we've coasters aside, we've had a fantastic time here in Coventry. Despite GB losing, it's been some fantastic tennis. The girls have done really well. I think there's definitely positives that they can take away from the tie. And we look forward to finding out where the tie will be, the playoff will be in November against whom, and where the finals will be as well. Will Raducanu
play it? I think that's the biggest question coming out of this as much. I mean, well, I guess it's a question to you both. Do you feel like Raducanu would add to this team, given the level that they've shown against a very, very game French squad?
I mean, Raducanu's level is undeniable. Her quality is undeniable. What she did at the US Open, I will never tire of talking about it because it was so impressive. So I think she is someone who would benefit from it as well as the team benefit from it. I think actually Raducanu would benefit more than the team would.
It feels like the event would benefit, let's be honest, because if Raducanu plays, it feels like it would be in a bigger stadium than necessarily without Raducanu.
Yeah, and I do think that if I'm being a little bit on the harsh side to the team that was fielded, you have to pick players that put this together on the tour on a weekly basis. And I think that Burridge and Raducanu are players who do that on a weekly basis this year and last year, kind of despite injury or what's going on there. So I would love to see Jodie Burridge has more than earned her position in the playoffs. And it shouldn't be if she's selected, she should be selected. But whether she'd like to play or not, having been excluded for a couple of times, I think that would be of interest to me. But I would like us to field our strongest team with Olivia and Alicia as our doubles partnership. And just see where we go, because I think at the moment we're in an unknown as to what our strongest team would be, but we have put in great showings nevertheless.
And I mean, just before we end, what I did love, just going back to that Barnett and Nicholls interview, we did talk about, well, Chris, you did talk about karaoke, and I'm not going to lie, we may be going and doing a little bit of celebrating later in Coventry. There may or may not be karaoke involved, but Barnett's favourite karaoke song, Robbie Williams' Angels. Are you guys down with that, or are you looking for something a little bit different?
No, that's a classic. I think that's an absolute tune. I'm down with that.
That's a little bit more of you, Joel, than I think it might be of me based on your playlist whilst you've been editing the podcast this weekend.
Hey, what? I'm all about the
Elton John.
Elton John, yes. I mean, listeners, I was at Elton John on Thursday night. I wasn't able to join Chris on Media Day because I did have tickets that for like 5 years genuinely in the waiting in London for Elton John. So maybe I'll bring out some Rocket Man this evening.
Have you got Elton John coasters at home?
Oh, I don't. I should be getting some Elton John shades. I feel would be maybe more appropriate. light up shades.
Well, let's see how we get on in Coventry. Maybe we'll find somewhere that does a nice classy Hugo for you to try, Joel.
Oh, here we go.
Leave the woo-woos aside and get the Hugos out. But yeah, I hope everyone's enjoyed all our coverage from the Billie Jean King Cup qualifier in Coventry. We will be back on Monday for our regular tour catch-up. So don't worry, we haven't forgotten Monte Carlo. There's plenty going on the French Riviera.
I definitely haven't forgotten Monte Carlo, because in our last catch-up, I did say Sinner Rublev final, and it is very much looking like that at the moment.
We'll have to see, Joel. It's not done yet. It's not over till it's over.
Okay. I'm hoping it does, because I'm definitely thinking about putting a little voice recording in there. So just to let you guys know. But yes, listeners, I hope you've enjoyed our live coverage of the Billie Jean King Cup in Coventry. Remember to subscribe to us to stay up to date on all the action to come from the ATP and WTA tours.
We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all major podcasting platforms out there. And if you like what you're hearing, then make sure to leave us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
You can also follow us on social media or email the show. We're on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at Tennis Weekly Pod. Or you can email us at tennisweeklypod@gmail.com. And don't forget to check out our website, tennisweekly.co.uk.
And we will be back on Monday from Tennis Weekly HQ with a tour catch-up. So I hope you can join us for that. But in the meantime, it's goodbye from Kim.
Goodbye.
It's goodbye from Chris.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. We'll see you again soon.